New Hampshire in mid-fall never disappoints. The trees and lakes, amber and aglow, the whitening of the White Mountain State still a calendar page turn away. On this trip, though, we set our sights in part on a more urban location. You've heard of flyover country? This is drive-by country. Rochester, New Hampshire is one of those places in New England that sounds familiar. Seems like you must have been there, at least driven by, but then again, maybe not. Part of that is a simple quirk of geography. It is, after all, tucked way off on one side of the state, and truthfully, most folks passing by here really are on their way further north or south. But from the mills of yesterday to a burgeoning art scene today, this is very much a city with its own history to tell and its own reasons for not passing by. The same Chronicle River that drew Abenaki Indians here to hunt and fish later drew manufacturing. First textiles, then shoes. Only two of Rochester's mills survive today. Both have new lives in a mix of residential and commercial redevelopment. In the late 19th century, Rochester was a transportation hub, but the late 1950s brought Interstates 93 and 95 on either side, and the city became increasingly bypassed.
It's a city that has seen some hard knocks, was prosperous and thriving in the old days, went through a pretty long period where things were kind of tough, came back, had another recession, and I think is now back on the move.
Rochester Mayor Caroline McCarley was a transplant from south of New Hampshire, Birmingham, Alabama.
I can't claim to be a native, but I like to say I married a native.
That was 45 years ago. On this visit, McCarley had recently announced she'd seek a third term as mayor. She and the city council are at work on a new master plan for downtown where some stubbornly vacant storefronts persist, while only a few doors down, new cafes and restaurants open up. McCarley also sees a hidden asset here that's been especially strong and helpful.
There is a sense of volunteerism around here. We're not a well-to-do community. We work pretty hard to have enough money to pay for our schools, and yet people will volunteer all the time.
What can you do? What can you do? We don't need idea people, we need people to do stuff. If it's such a great idea, then why the hell aren't you doing it?
Rochester native Matt Wyatt, passionate about the arts, founded the Rochester Museum of Fine Arts in 2011 without spending a penny on space.
I'm an artist, this is what I know how to do, and we are totally free. We're totally accessible to the people.
Wyatt accomplished that by siting the museum in 3 different public spaces that were unused, including part of the high school, which showcases some impressive local artists, and where 4 copies of original Andy Warhol prints now hang.
Having these iconic, well-known prints actually sort of legitimize all the other talent that we have in our collection.
The movable feast that is the Rochester MFA also has 2 spaces downtown, including on the 2nd floor of the public library.
Totally unused, so we utilize public spaces like this rather than having a brick and mortar model. If you have a library in a community center or a city hall, you can make an art gallery.
Indeed, public art is sprouting up all around Rochester. Bianca Morales moved here from Texas, left behind the Longhorns, and drew her first moose on this mural.
Very good. It's very good.
But Rochester's revitalization really started with its beloved Opera House, the ultimate hidden gem. It sits on the 2nd floor of City Hall, up an unobtrusive stairway.
It has a rich sort of cultural feel to the room when you come in.
The Rochester Opera House was built along with City Hall in 1893. After falling into disrepair, the community rallied to save it as a nonprofit in 1998.
And it really brought the community together, and it still is. It's still the driving force of the downtown.
A busy and varied performance schedule now fills the year here, but the renovation also saved the Opera House's hidden claim to fame. It's the nation's only surviving historic venue with a movable floor, inclined for audiences, flat for dinners or dancing.
The movable floor in the up position.
The original machinery was also restored to operate the floor.
When the floor goes up and then we come in afterwards, and there are 21 jacks, and we have to crawl all the way down there and hand tighten all of these jacks to keep the floor from bouncing.
The arts helping to revitalize a city where they're just fine being right where they are. thank you.
People say, you know, oh, if only Rochester could be more like Dover or Portsmouth, but we don't really want to be. We want to be more like Rochester.
Wow, you know, I've never been to Rochester, and talk about a city that's gone through a transformation.
Right, and it's really the story of so many other mill towns, former mill towns all around New England, whether it's Lawrence or Lowell or Haverhill. They have all had to find ways to transform and revitalize themselves. And in Lawrence and Lowell, you know, it was history, and in North Adams, it was Mass Mocha, and now Rochester is hoping to find a way to revitalization through arts and entertainment. And we'll see how it works, but there sure is a new vibe in Rochester.
They are on their way. All right. Next, time to fuel up at the Far Out Diner.